Hey guys, in this video, I want to share with you how my business actually took off when I stopped listening to detailers. Now, of course, I'm going to get into the explanation of what I mean by that, but I just want to give you a little bit of context as we're jumping in so that you understand what you're looking at. This is a maintenance client of mine, and I'm actually prepping it before I do just a very simple, very slight paint correction. Maybe you might even call it paint enhancement before we put on a simple spray ceramic coating, and then we maintain it with ceramic coating sprays from there. And we'll get into the details on that in just a second, but I kind of want to tell you guys a little bit of a story about kind of where I came from, especially about 6 years ago, 7 years ago in my detailing business, because I think a lot of you guys will relate to what I'm saying here. So if you are just rocking in your detailing business right now and you have absolutely no issues and it's just going as good as it possibly could go, then this video is probably not for you. But what I want to address in this video is the pitfall that ends up happening to a lot of detailers in the beginning stages of their business because of what they're listening to outside in the detailing world. And the best analogy that I can give for this entire video is this. A lot of times it's easy to listen to a podcast or read a book, and you actually take that book, you take that podcast, whatever they were saying, and we almost let the pendulum swing totally too far the other way, and you take everything that book said and you're like, okay, I've got to follow this to a T. And the reason why I'm giving this as an analogy is because the issue that you end up facing when you take that book and you apply it to yourself 100% is that that book was not written, or that podcast was not recorded specifically for you at this particular time in your life, at this particular business you have, at this particular stage, with your particular mind, with your particular socioeconomic background, with your particular education. Those books, those podcasts can never, ever, ever be specifically contextualized only for you. And that's where we hit this like gray area in the detailing business world of how do you know what to take for yourself and apply to your life? How do you know how to take it and how to apply it? And how do you know how long to apply it, when to apply it, where to apply it? Those are things that really have to be talked about if you want to succeed in the detailing business, not necessarily because those are things that you have to do by default, but in many ways, it's things that you have to actually avoid. Understanding how to apply it properly allows you to understand how to avoid the things that should not be applied. And so one of the biggest things that I want to talk about as an example to what I'm saying here is many guys email me, message me, text me, all those sort of things, and they ask things like, hey, Luke, I was watching this particular social media, reading this particular book, listening to this particular podcast, and I don't think that I should be a mobile detailer because I don't have a water tank and a pressure washer and a gas-powered generator, and I don't have a big van. They might also say something like, hey, Luke, I don't think I should be charging my customer X amount of dollars for the spray ceramic service that I'm putting on the exterior of their vehicle, because I was looking in some forums and reading on some social media pages, and some of these guys were really condemning these spray ceramic coatings, these spray kind of liquid-based, easy to apply ceramic coatings, unlike the traditional ceramic coatings. Is that true? Should I really not be doing this? And again, I'm giving these examples because they represent things that probably we all think in the detailing world when it comes to how do you run things? What do you do? Particularly because we're in the social media age, we always have a different voice kind of speaking into things. And so because of that, I really want to base this whole video on this really simple concept. You alone are going to know what's best for your business at any given time because you're most familiar with your business. So while yes, of course it makes sense to bring other people in, especially when other people are experts in other areas, at the end of the day, it is unbelievably important to have the skill set to understand when to apply something to you, how to apply it to you, and how to move through the weeds and basically take out and throw away the things that don't need to be applied to you. So about 7 years ago, when I was still running my auto detailing business, but it was not at the level that it exists today, I really had this idea in my head that wasn't necessarily based in social media comments and sort of emails that I was getting in forums, because honestly, 7 years ago, the auto detailing sort of online space was not at all what it is today. But the people that I knew who were in auto detailing, who were not in auto detailing, all kind of had this concept of, hey, you need to be sort of a stationary auto detailer with a warehouse that you can operate in, because it's going to allow you to kind of operate in all seasons of life, winter, summer, all that sort of stuff. You need to be in the shade. You need to have a place where customers can come. You're probably going to have to hire some worker bees who can do the grunt work. And there was this sort of like mental picture that was painted where it was like, if you're going to get into the detailing business, this is how it's going to have to look. And in many ways, it really discouraged me just right from the outset, because I was experiencing some success in this other way and this other model. But even though I was experiencing success there and the numbers didn't lie, in the midst of that, it felt like, well, if this is what people who are smarter than me and know more than me are saying that I should do, then maybe this is something I need to consider. And actually, in my consideration of all of that, it hindered and hampered the success I was experiencing in this other area, because I was trying to pursue this sort of ambiguous model that didn't really have any clear reason behind why it made more sense, especially when I was experiencing success doing other things. But nonetheless, it kind of formed these just like default limitations in my mind of, okay, if I'm going to do this, this is going to be have to be how it looks. And it immediately squashed my creativity. It squashed any sort of innovative thought that I was having of, hey, what if I did it this way? What would it look like if I tried this new thing, if I didn't do it the traditional way that everybody else was doing it? And it was extremely discouraging. The numbers were discouraging, and everything about it was discouraging. And it was about at that time that I began not only to consider what would happen if I went really, really hard with this mobile detailing and I exclusively focused on what was working and what was working well, but also adding in what I call the maintenance client strategy, rather than building an auto detailing business based off of just bringing in new customers, trying to get fleets in, trying to make it a numbers game more or less, and only worrying about the bottom line. Actually focusing on building a detailing business built on a little bit of a different concept, saying, hey, can I actually not treat customers as disposable, and long-term build business connections along the way, not just to exponentially increase my business success in the detailing world, but also to help me in other ventures should that be something that actually comes up in the future. So it's this kind of creative thinking, this innovative thinking where you said, hey, can I do this? Would this be possible to address things this way? And when I decided to go all in with that and say, what would happen if I tried it this way? No one's talking about it. I don't know exactly what the results are going to be, but logically it does make sense. The numbers seem to make sense so far. So why don't I at least try it? And yeah, it's a little bit of like the wild, wild west mentality where it doesn't feel like anyone's doing this. It's a bit uncharted waters, but let's see what happens. And I can say that years later now, that was probably the best decision that I ever made, to actually stop listening to what everybody else was saying and to contextualize everything to my specific situation and say, yes, there are smarter people than me in certain areas. There are people who can speak into certain situations because they have a certain level of expertise. But at the end of the day, I'm going to have to make a decision on how to contextualize this particular problem for my particular situation, because this book, this podcast, this person is not in the situation. So they're speaking a bit from this outside perspective, and it's not becoming something that's helpful for me over time. It's hurting me over time. So my main point with this video, because of where we're at right now with the nature of auto detailing online, with how it looks, normally I'm putting out a ton of business content. I'm putting out a ton of content on how to use products, strategies, tools, all of that sort of stuff. If you've watched my videos at all, the reason I want to put this out is because it's such a common way to kind of fail before you ever actually give yourself a chance to actually start and see if failure is something that comes naturally, or if you actually have something to offer the marketplace in the auto detailing business world, but you're being discouraged by these people or this quote-unquote way of always doing things and feeling like you don't have the capacity to actually fit into that category, and because of that, never actually starting or introducing the idea to which you ascribe. Now, in addition to that, it's just as important, I think, to address the pendulum swing on the other end and say something along the lines of, yes, it is unbelievably important to listen to yourself in the midst of building your detailing business, because of course you are going to have insights, you're going to have ideas, and you're going to have things to put forward that other people just at the end of the day are not going to be able to fit into properly, and you have to learn how to sift through that stuff in order to get context for your situation. But In addition to that, it is just as important to recognize when a situation is actually calling you to recognize the own limits to what you know and admit, okay, the way I'm thinking about doing this probably won't work like this person or this podcast or this book is saying because of this, and this particular data. This is where it makes sense that the pitfall would come. Can you actually project out something and say, actually, there's a high likelihood of this particular thing not working because of this, and this. So there is absolutely a balance between taking what someone says, applying it, contextualizing it, and then deciding to throw it out if it doesn't fit, if the shoe doesn't fit in the same way. It is just as important to take that particular thing, contextualize it to your situation and say, okay, I could see this happening, negatively affecting this. It probably makes sense to go with what this person is saying. And so more than anything, the maintenance client approach, the mobile detailing approach that I've taken over the years, using customer water, using customer electric, treating customers as non-disposable, as an infinite income, saying I can actually create infinite levels of income in projecting into the future with one single customer. Thinking creatively has been unbelievably helpful in my detailing business, and deciding to not sort of take the conventional wisdom and say, okay, I'm going to have to be limited by the way someone's always done this. But at the same time, there are aspects of my detailing business that other people have also experienced as far as limitations that I also experience. Because once again, you can't just be a dreamer and sort of project out and pretend like everything is going to work just because you thought it up. Sometimes there is a reason to what someone is saying is not going to work, and it is actually wisdom to listen to it. So hopefully that makes sense, and at the same time, might give you a little bit encouragement to kind of practice sifting through the weeds of what you're going to hear on social media, on forums, on podcasts, in books you're reading, and kind of learning how to take those things with a grain of salt when they need to be taken with a grain of salt, or take them very seriously when they need to be taken very seriously, and having the skill to discern between when is appropriate to take which way is going to be unbelievably helpful in the future of your detailing business. And because we live in the age where everyone is telling you exactly how to do things, just be encouraged. I myself, coming from someone who kind of did things in a very unconventional way, and that has actually helped me dramatically over the years doing things in an unconventional way, let me just say the detailing world is ripe for people who actually think a little bit differently about their approach. And so there's a gap in the market by default because there's so many people who are just trying to do things the same way other people have always done them. It can actually provide you with a really serious competitive advantage if you can think a little bit creatively and innovatively, and thinking about how to apply certain things and certain kind of understandable things that have always worked in a bit of a creative way. Now, I'm talking about a sort of like in the clouds ambiguous concept right now, but just to bring it down in a little bit kind of a concrete way where you can actually see it in action, this particular vehicle is a great example of that. I'm applying a spray ceramic after a polish to this vehicle, and there's many detailers that would say, hey, why would you polish the vehicle and then not apply a traditional ceramic coating based on the longevity, durability of the protection? It just doesn't make sense to do that. The point is, in this particular contextualized situation, talking with my customer, understanding price points, understanding what they want, understanding future care of the vehicle, understand the nature of the vehicle before I saw it. All of these variables combined means that the particular equation that we've come up with here works for this particular contextualized situation. Life is complex, detailing is complex. It's necessary to consider a lot of variables and bring them in and conclude something based on the specific situation, which is really what we're talking about here. It's hard to think hard, but it is going to be best for you and your customer long term. But on social media and the detailing world, we like to make things simple, and the truth is life is just one big relatedness after the other. So guys, let's go ahead, close up shop, and check out the end result with this particular vehicle.